Alright, so last time this happened. Waited, and now it's too late. Now it's like chapter 361 came out, and now I can't say, oh yeah, I think like it's Mira said it. And I didn't really think I would need to make another video further explaining what I meant. But I've watched some other videos since talking about chapter 361, and still, people clearly think that the Skull Knight is King Gaislic, and it couldn't be further from the truth. And in this video I'm gonna explain to you why.
Arms wide open, I stand alone. I'm no hero, and I'm not made of stone. Right or wrong, I can hardly tell. I'm on the wrong side of heaven, and the righteous side of hell. The wrong side of heaven, and the righteous side of hell.
So let's start from what are the things that might make you think the Skull Knight may be King Gaislic. What do we know about the Skull Knight? We know he's been around for roughly 1,000 years. We know his appearance, and that's the main thing that really makes him resemble with King Gaislic. Because the first time we talked about King Gaislic, he's described as this man with this skull-shaped helmet. And Miura, being the narrative genius that he is, makes it so we find out this at the same time as Guts, which means we see Guts' reaction to this information, which is him, of course, correlating this character with the Skull Knight, because of course he would be. He met this guy with a skull as a fucking face, and he's talked about this character who had a skull as an helmet. He thinks about that, and in correlation we think about that, which is Miura's way of letting us think that we know the answer. And of course we cannot know it yet, because let's just think about it for a minute. It's the Skull Knight. It's one of Berserk's finest and most enigmatic characters, and you think that Miura would just tell you outright who it is pretty much the first time we see him? It would just be lame, and Miura is very much not a lame writer. Now, the other thing might be Slan in the Cliff Hut. When Guts is quote-unquote fighting her and the Skull Knight arrives, Slan refers to him as His Majesty, implying he's a king. So that's pretty much all there is to support the Skull Knight King Gaislic theory that I'm aware of. Now, let's start from the idea of what Skull Knight represents as a character. Skull Knight is some kind of future Guts, not in the way that he's actually Guts from the future, which somehow people believe, and I'm not even gonna touch that. But he's what Guts could become if he goes on the wrong path. That's the whole point of Skull Knight, showing us what Guts could become, what he shouldn't become, and what he should avoid. That being said, let's think about King Gaislic as a character. We know that he was a king. He brought together all these different countries, all these different armies, and once the war was over, he ruled over all these countries, creating the first real empire where now the Midlands stand. And we know that he wasn't the best king, we know he imposed a lot of taxes, but the point is, he was a king, a probably very charismatic one, because he wouldn't be able to bring together all these different countries in the first place if he wasn't. So we have this very charismatic figure, this king. Doesn't that make you think, oh, that's way more like Griffith than Guts? Like, it's so clear. It's clearly a Griffith parallel. That being said, I've watched this video,
leave it on the description, go check on it,
which explained this concept that King Gaislic was this Griffith kind of character, and he had a right-hand man, like pretty much what Guts was to Griffith. before he left the Band of the Hawks. And this guy, this right hand for King Aeslic, he was the Skull Knight. Because, you know, he was this guts kind of character, which the Skull Knight should be. But that's pretty much where the theory stopped in regard of the Skull Knight. Now, let's assume that King Aeslic was this Griffith kind of character, which again makes way more sense than King Aeslic being the Skull Knight. We still have Slan referring to him as a king. Now, when Guts and Puck meet the Skull Knight for the first time together, Puck says that for a second he thought he was an elf. He gave him this impression of being an elf. Now that's the last point. That's what really made me understand that the Skull Knight is clearly the former Elf King. And once I considered this possibility, it all just came together so nicely that at this point it could not be otherwise. Because we have Puck saying this, we have Selang calling him Majesty, and most importantly, we have the Skull Knight being the one character, not even Puck, the elf itself, but Skull Knight being the one character that tells Guts to go to the Elf Island, because he knows that the Elf's King will be capable of bringing back Casca's memories. So he clearly knows some things about the Elf's Island and the Elf's King. And this was a theory I believed in for a long time, but I never actually made a video about it. And with chapter 361 coming out, I thought, well, I can't really do anything now, because it's pretty much confirmed. We have the mage, I don't know why I'm so bad with names, but we have the mage calling him King Majesty, and he says that he knew him as a child, that his father knew him very well, implying that the Skull Knight was this character that stood in that island a long time ago for a long time. So it just wouldn't make any sense for him to be King Aeslic at this point. I mean, at this point it's just, again, confirmed by Miura, it's a fact. But still, I've watched some videos talking about chapter 361, and some people still saw this as confirmation of the Skull Knight being King Aeslic theory, which I just cannot understand how you would come to that conclusion at this point. So yeah, again, didn't think this video had to be done, but clearly some people still had confusion about this manner. So yeah, that's pretty much all I had to say, and I guess I'll see you next time. Thanks.
So put your glasses on.